Let's dive into a story that feels like it was written for our time, even though it's ancient. It's a cautionary tale about a civilization so brilliant they could carve entire cities into solid rock. But it's also about a single, devastating choice that sealed their fate. This isn't just a history lesson, you'll see. It's a mirror. We're actually going to start at the end with this single haunting line. It's what's said about what was left of this mighty civilization. Just silence. A powerful, bustling city just gone. So you have to wonder, how on earth did they get here? And this, right here, this is the heart of the mystery, isn't it? On one hand, you have almost unimaginable power, people who literally bent mountains to their will. And on the other hand, just emptiness. Poof. To figure out how they vanished, we've got to go back to when they were at the absolute peak of their strength. Okay, so let's rewind time to the height of the people of Thamūd. And look, these weren't just builders. We're talking about artists and engineers on a whole other level. So what made them so special? Well, they had these incredible gifts. Their skill with stone was second to none. They built these secure homes deep inside mountains, creating fortresses. And with that came wealth, power, and this creeping feeling that they were totally invincible. Their homes weren't just shelter. They were a statement. They were carved to defy the world. And that feeling of security started to become a fatal flaw. They started to think their safety came from the stone, not from the one who gave them the skill to carve it. So how does that happen? How do you go from being so blessed to being so arrogant? Well, it's a slow slide, isn't it? First, you have this amazing talent. Then you use it to create security, these permanent feeling homes. But that security makes you feel self-sufficient. You start thinking, we did this, our hands, our genius. And pretty soon, they were so focused on the permanence of stone, they completely lost sight of how fragile their own lives were. They forgot where their gifts came from and started worshiping idols they'd carved themselves. But they were given a chance. A messenger was sent to them. And here's the thing, he wasn't some stranger, some outsider. Sālih was one of them, a man they knew, a man they trusted. And his message was so simple. Just remember the one true God who gave you all this. He wasn't trying to take their power or their wealth. He was just calling them back to humility. But instead of listening, their pride just couldn't handle it. So they challenged him. They basically said, oh yeah, prove it. Give us a sign. And they demanded a miracle on their own terms. This challenge, this moment of arrogance, set the stage for a test that would define everything. The arrival of a miraculous she-camel. The leaders, feeling their authority questioned, they essentially mocked him in public. They pointed to this huge, lifeless rock and made a demand they thought was absolutely impossible. Look, they weren't actually looking for proof. They were trying to call his bluff, to humiliate him and get everyone to move on. They were setting a trap. But then, the impossible happened. A living, breathing, magnificent she-camel emerged right out of that solid rock. And this is so crucial. The miracle wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of the real test. It was a physical, undeniable truth that forced a spiritual decision on every single one of them. And this is where their arrogance really comes into full view. On one side, you have this clear, undeniable sign that they themselves demanded. But on the other side, they saw a threat. You see, the camel was supposed to share their water source, drinking one day while they used it the next. And this small inconvenience, this tiny disruption to their daily routine, was seen as a major attack on their control and their social order. Suddenly, the truth was just inconvenient. And what happens when a clear truth becomes inconvenient? Well, people often make a really terrible choice. Instead of humbling themselves in front of the miracle they asked for, they decided it would be easier to just get rid of it. This wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate, calculated plot. The leaders convinced everyone that this divine sign was actually a burden. They chose their comfortable lives over a clear truth. And so a few of them conspired, attacked, and slaughtered the she-camel, directly defying the one warning they were given: do not harm her. And it didn't even end there. Drunk on their own pride, they went back to Sālih and openly taunted him. It was like they were saying, see, we did it, now what? Bring on that punishment you keep talking about, if you're telling the truth. I mean, this was the absolute peak of their arrogance. They didn't just break the rule, they dared God to do something about it. So they got a final warning, 3 days. Not some vague threat, but a clear countdown. And as the days passed, physical signs actually started to appear on them. Their faces changed color, that arrogance started to crack, and fear began to creep in. They could feel it. The promise of destruction was becoming real. They had time. They had time to turn back, but their pride was just carved too deep into their hearts. And when those 3 days were up, the promise was kept. The end wasn't a slow decline. It was sudden. It was overwhelming. A single, mighty, piercing blast ripped through their valley. And in an instant, it was all over. And here's the ultimate irony. The very fortresses they had carved into mountains to keep themselves safe, those became their tombs. All that power, all that skill, it meant absolutely nothing. The constant noise of their civilization was replaced by a permanent, deafening silence. Now, the ruins of Thamūd are ancient for sure, but this story, it isn't just history. It leaves behind a series of questions that honestly echo right into our world today. It kind of forces us to look in the mirror. I mean, really think about it. Their pride was visible, right there in their architecture. Where do we carve ours? Is it in the gleaming skyscrapers that touch the clouds? Is it in the complex code that runs our lives? The career titles we chase to feel important? What are the modern mountains we're carving to try and make ourselves feel invincible? The she-camel was a truth that got in the way of their comfortable routine. What are our inconvenient truths? The ones we'd rather not look at? Is it the real environmental cost of all our modern conveniences? The little ethical shortcuts we take for our own gain? Or maybe it's just the difficult conversations we avoid with the people we love, just to keep things easy. They put all their faith into what their hands could build, and they truly believed it would last forever. But it was all gone in a moment. So that forces us to ask ourselves a tough question. What are we investing our lives in? Is it our job title? Our social media feed? Things that are by nature temporary? Or are we actually building something in our character, in our relationships, in our communities that has real, lasting value? In the end, this entire story, with all its drama, boils down to one simple choice. A choice that every single person in every generation has to make. When we're faced with a clear truth, especially a truth that makes us uncomfortable or challenges our pride, what do? Do we have the humility to accept it? Or do we, like the people of Thamūd, choose the false comfort of arrogance? That choice was their end, and it's a choice that continues to define us today.